And especially in those conditions where we were just at it all the time. At least that's my recollection of it.
He wasn't warm. He wasn't chatty. Gene Hackman showed up, did the work, and expected everyone else to shut up and do the same.
Some of the filmmaking is very uncomfortable. It's not terribly glamorous at all. And
on screen, he was electric. But off camera, Hackman was a storm held just barely in check. One crossed line, one moment of disrespect, and he'd never look at you the same again. He didn't do fake apologies. He didn't play the PR game, and if you got under his skin, he didn't forget. He came from a generation that didn't believe in second chances, especially not on set. Bonnie and Clyde, The French Connection, Unforgiven. He built a career on pressure, silence, and pure presence. And when someone cracked that atmosphere, the fallout wasn't loud, but it was final.
Well, we were there 4 days, and they finally got enough to finish it, but it was touch and go.
He worked with legends, Eastwood, Washington, Duvall. But there were also names he never spoke again. Here are the 6 actors Gene Hackman couldn't stand and never forgot. One of these actors said working with Hackman was a nightmare, but the feeling was mutual. Number 1. Liza Minnelli. On the set of The Glenda Diaries, Gene Hackman reached a breaking point with Liza Minnelli. Minnelli, known for her brilliance and electrifying presence, brought vulnerability and volatility to every scene. Hackman, by contrast, thrived on precision, quiet concentration, and unwavering focus. They clashed not over art, but atmosphere. Minnelli often spoke her lines as if in concert, not quiet and measured, but loud, emotional, expressive. Hackman, who believed in holding still and letting a look do the work, found it destabilizing. One evening during rehearsals, Minnelli began ad-libbing, leaning into self-referential humor. Hackman shot her a look that froze the air. Without raising his voice, he said, "Liza, shut the F up." The words cut through the set like a whip. It wasn't theatrical flair, it was an order, and it echoed. The production rapped without apology. Minnelli didn't respond on set, but insiders say she avoided Hackman afterward. No shared screen time, no farewell hug. When the cast gathered for marketing interviews, they sat on opposite sides of the room. Hackman never referenced the moment publicly. But when later asked about working with performers who attract attention before easing into the scene, he paused. "Some people break the chord before the music starts," he said, clearly speaking off-camera code. They never worked together again. Hackman's world, one rooted in discipline, couldn't absorb Minnelli's drama. He didn't rage, he didn't rant, he just drew a hard line. Liza Minnelli's talent wasn't in question, but in Hackman's terms, neither was his reaction. Some behaviors were non-negotiable for him, and once crossed, doors stayed closed. Number 2. John Travolta. When John Travolta and Gene Hackman shared the screen in primary colors, it was supposed to be a dynamic pairing, 2 very different acting schools colliding in a political satire. But behind the scenes, things were far from smooth. Travolta came in with star power, a loose improvisational rhythm, and a deep trust in charisma. Hackman, on the other hand, was all structure, old-school preparation, intense focus, no fluff. The contrast wasn't just stylistic, it was personal. Hackman reportedly grew frustrated with Travolta's tendency to veer off script, especially during emotionally loaded scenes. One crew member later said, "Hackman would do his take, razor sharp, locked in. Then Travolta would riff like it was an SNL sketch. You could see Hackman clenching his jaw." The real crack came during a night shoot, when Travolta offered Hackman a suggestion. Something about softening a moment to make it more accessible. Hackman didn't explode. He simply turned and said, "I've been doing this longer than you've been famous. Let me do my job." It wasn't a meltdown, but a message. This wasn't a sandbox. From that moment on, Hackman kept his distance. They didn't speak off camera. Travolta later praised Hackman in interviews, calling him intense but brilliant, but the tone always had a trace of unease. You could tell the experience left a mark. There was no reunion film, no shared press tour camaraderie. Just one project, one shoot, and one wall built right down the middle of the set. Hackman didn't hate Travolta personally, but professionally, he had no time for showboating. Number 3. Will Smith. When Will Smith and Gene Hackman crossed paths on Enemy of the State, the contrast could not be more striking. Smith, the energetic, improvisational force of modern Hollywood, and Hackman, the wry, unflinching veteran who carried the weight of classic cinema. It should have been a masterstroke pairing, but on set, it felt like a collision of worlds. Smith was all spontaneity, riffing lines, landing polished zingers, and bringing spontaneous charm to every take. Hackman, meanwhile, moved in slow, deliberate precision. For him, each line had purpose, each pause had meaning, and any deviation felt like a betrayal of that purpose. A crew member later recalled watching Hackman sit back on set, arms crossed, as Smith ad-libbed his way through a scene. When asked off-camera about it, Hackman said flatly, "He's great at being Will Smith, but he isn't great at being quiet." No judgment, no apology, just observation. But harsh enough coming from a man whose silence holds storms. During one scene, Smith added flair that made the scene pop, but sent the tonal balance off course. Hackman paused, looked over, and quietly said, "Will, tone it down." No rant, no meltdown, just a correction that cut deep. They finished the project without drama. No lights dimmed, no microphones dropped, but the energy never aligned. Hackman never again shared a frame with Smith. No cameos, no reunions, not even a passing mention during awards chatter. In Hackman's world, talent isn't enough. It's about timing, discipline, a respect for the moment. And when Smith turned the dial too loud, Hackman didn't raise his voice. He just walked away, leaving a quiet void where collaboration once stood. Number 4. Anjelica Huston. The Royal Tenenbaums was a Wes Anderson masterpiece, quirky, melancholic, and packed with acting royalty. At the center, Gene Hackman. And while his performance earned raves, his off-screen behavior turned the shoot into a slow-motion standoff, especially with co-star Anjelica Huston. Huston, no stranger to intense sets, came in ready to collaborate. But Hackman had already made up his mind about the project, the style, and the cast. He wasn't a fan of Anderson's delicate tone or the film's stylized dialogue. He said as much, often. And Huston, fiercely protective of the film and its director, wasn't having it. What began as quiet frustration turned into cutting remarks between takes. Huston later said, "He was incredibly rude. I think he resented the whole thing, the script, the cast, the vibe. He didn't want to be there." The tension was thick. Hackman reportedly called Anderson a candy ass and told him to act like a man. Huston stepped in more than once to defend Anderson, once even telling Hackman to back off mid-rehearsal. After the final scene, Hackman didn't say goodbye. No rap party, no photos, just gone. Huston, to this day, avoids talking about him unless asked directly. And when she does, it's measured, cold, done. It wasn't a feud, it was a disconnect, a fundamental clash in temperament and respect. Huston brought care and collaboration, Hackman brought resistance, and when the curtain fell, there was no encore. Number 5. Bill Murray. Wes Anderson's The Royal Tenenbaums brought together an ensemble stacked with talent. Bill Murray, Anjelica Huston, Ben Stiller, Gwyneth Paltrow, and Gene Hackman. But one pairing that never gelled? Hackman and Murray. Both men are giants in their own right. But while Murray is famously eccentric and laid back, Hackman was all edge, razor sharp, intense, and allergic to improvisational chaos. The two clashed, not in blow-ups, but in presence, in posture, in the very energy they brought to the set. Hackman reportedly grew tired of Murray's offbeat timing and relaxed approach to scenes. He liked precision, Murray liked detours. During a press event, Murray was asked what it was like working with Hackman. His response? A dry, pointed smile followed by, "Let's just say it was educational." But behind that politeness was friction. On more than one occasion, Hackman allegedly complained about Murray's pace, muttering that scenes were getting sloppy. Murray, never one to escalate tension, would quietly nod and walk away. But the disconnect widened. Director Wes Anderson later admitted the atmosphere was tense. Hackman was unhappy, Murray was frustrated, and the set, while never explosive, was hard to navigate. He said he often had to buffer between the two actors just to get through the day. They never worked together again. No follow-up films, no friendly nods in interviews, just silence. For Hackman, that silence meant everything. It wasn't passive-aggressive, it was definitive. Because once Hackman felt a scene, or a co-star, wasn't serious about the work, he didn't try to fix it. He just disappeared from it, and that's exactly what he did with Murray. Number 6. Danny Glover. Danny Glover and Gene Hackman were two seasoned performers cast alongside each other in ensemble films. Both brought gravitas, intensity, and commanding screen presence. But sometimes, two strong forces simply don't align, and their reported friction was more about atmosphere than arguments. The tension surfaced during Bat 21, where Glover and Hackman shared multiple high-stakes scenes. While the movie itself dealt with complex emotional and action-driven sequences, Hackman reportedly struggled with what he considered Glover's over-consultative style. Glover liked to rehearse, discuss motivation, and bounce ideas around. Hackman didn't. Hackman's style was different, quiet, inward, and rooted in instinct. He disliked table reads, he had no time for backstory breakdowns, he just wanted to shoot the scene and move on. And Glover's approach, while thoughtful, grated on Hackman's nerves. In one incident relayed by an assistant director, Hackman was asked to do a line read with Glover. Hackman declined. When pressed, he reportedly snapped, "I'm not here to run drills. I'm here to act." Glover, ever composed, nodded, and kept his distance after that. They made it through the production without public spats, but the chemistry never warmed. Interviews during the press run were done separately. And when awards buzz came, Hackman distanced himself from the project altogether, opting out of retrospectives or reunion commentary. It wasn't personal in the tabloid sense, there were no grudges or insults in the press, but Hackman's message was clear. He didn't connect with Glover's style, and in his book, that was enough to close the chapter for good. Gene Hackman didn't scream, he didn't rant, he simply walked away. For an actor who commanded every frame with quiet authority, his real power was knowing when a scene, on screen or off, wasn't worth finishing. He didn't do second chances, and he sure as hell didn't fake chemistry. In Hackman's world, respect wasn't negotiable, and if you broke it, you didn't get a dramatic exit, you just didn't get invited back. If this deep dive into Hollywood tension hit the mark, be sure to like and subscribe, and let us know in the comments, who do you think clashed with Hackman the hardest?